and how James Earl Jones shall read The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe.
Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. "Only this, and nothing more." Ah, distinctly I remember, it was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember brought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow. Vainly had I sought to borrow from my books surcease of sorrow, sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden whom the angels named Lenore, nameless here forevermore. And the silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain thrilled me, filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before, so that now, to still the beating of my heart, I stood repeating, "'Tis some visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door, some late visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. This it is, and nothing more." Presently my soul grew stronger, hesitating then no longer. "Sir," said I, "or madam, truly, your forgiveness I implore, but the fact is, I was napping, and so gently you came rapping, and so faintly you came tapping, tapping at my chamber door, that I scarce was sure I heard you." Here I opened wide the door. Darkness there, and nothing more. Deep into this darkness peering, long I stood there wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. But the silence was unbroken, and the stillness gave no token, and the only word there spoken was the whispered word, "Lenore." This I whispered, and an echo murmured back the word, "Lenore." Merely this, and nothing more. Back into the chamber turning, all my soul within me burning, soon again I heard a tapping somewhat louder than before. "Surely," said I, "surely that is something at my window lattice. Let me see then what thereat is, and this mystery explore. Let my heart be still a moment, and this mystery explore. 'Tis the wind, and nothing more." Open here I flung the shutter, when with many a flirt and flutter in there stepped a stately raven of the saintly days of yore. Not the least obeisance made he, not a minute stopped or stayed he, but with mien of lord or lady perched above my chamber door, perched upon the bust of Pallas just above my chamber door, perched and sat, and nothing more. Then this ebony bird beguiling my sad fancy into smiling by the grave and stern decorum of the countenance it wore. "Though thy crest be shorn and shaven, thou," I said, "art sure no craven. Ghastly, grim, and ancient raven, wandering from the nightly shore, tell me what thy lordly name is on the night's Plutonian shore." Quoth the raven, "Nevermore." Much I marveled at this ungainly fowl to hear discourse so plainly, though its answer little meaning, little relevancy bore. For we cannot help agreeing that no living human being ever yet was blessed with seeing bird above his chamber door, bird or beast upon the sculptured bust above his chamber door, with such a name as Nevermore. But the raven, sitting lonely on the placid bust, spoke only that one word, as if his soul in that one word he did outpour. Nothing further than he uttered, not a feather than he fluttered, till I scarcely more than muttered, "Other friends have flown before. On the morrow he will leave me, as my hopes have flown before." Then the bird said, "Nevermore." Startled by the stillness broken by reply so aptly spoken, "Doubtless," said I, "what it utters is its only stock and store, caught from some unhappy master, whom unmerciful disaster followed fast and followed faster, till his songs one burden bore, to the dirges of his hope that melancholy burden bore, of never, nevermore." But the raven still beguiling my sad fancy into smiling, straight I wheel a cushioned seat in front of bird and bust and door. Then upon the velvet sinking, I betook myself to linking fancy unto fancy, thinking, what this ominous bird of yore, what this grim, ungainly, ghastly, gaunt and ominous bird of yore meant in croaking nevermore. This I said, engaged in guessing, but no syllable expressing to the fowl whose fiery eyes now burn into my bosom's core. This and more I sat divining, with my head at ease reclining on the cushion's velvet lining, that the lamplight gloated o'er, but whose velvet violet lining the lamplight gloating o'er she shall press, nevermore. Then methought the air grew denser, perfumed from some unseen censer, sung by seraphim whose footfalls tinkled on the tufted floor. Wretch, I cried, thy God hath lent thee, by these angels he hath sent thee, respite, respite, and nepenthe from thy memories of Lenore. Quaff, oh quaff this kind nepenthe, and forget this lost Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still if bird or devil, whether tempter sent or whether tempest tossed thee here or shore, desolate yet all undaunted on this desert land enchanted, on this home by horror haunted. Tell me truly, I implore, is there balm in Gilead? Tell me, I implore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still if bird or devil, by that heaven that bends above us, by that God we both adore, tell this soul with sorrow laden, if within the distant Aden, it shall clasp a sainted maiden, whom the angels name Lenore, clasp a rare and radiant maiden, whom the angels name Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Be that word our sign of parting, bird or fiend, I shrieked upstarting, get thee back into the tempest and the night's Plutonian shore. Leave no black plume as a token of that lie thy soul hath spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken. Quit the bust above my door. Take thy beat from out my heart, and take thy form from off my door. Quoth the raven, nevermore. And the raven, never flitting, still is sitting on the pallid bust of Pallas just above my chamber door. And his eyes have all the seeming of a demon's that is dreaming, and the lamplight o'er him streaming throws his shadow on the floor. And my soul, from out that shadow that lies floating on the floor, shall be lifted nevermore.
Alright, so we've gotten through the poem. What I want you to do at this point, I want you to look at these concepts here. When we go back to analyze the poem, and I hate using the word analyze because it sounds like we're tearing the life out of it, but really, when you go back and you try to understand the deeper feelings in the poem, let's put it that way, we have to stop and think about the characters. There are three main characters in this poem: the speaker, the raven, and Lenore. And the only one that we're sure of really exists is the speaker. The speaker is sitting there mourning the death of his loved one, of this woman known as Lenore. And he spends the entire poem pondering, wondering, is there a chance that someday, even though she's dead, I could be reunited with Lenore, that when I die, I will travel across this Plutonian shore, and I will be, again, with my loved one, Lenore. And the only conclusion he can come up with is, no, it's not going to happen. She's gone forever. She's been taken from me. Whether you believe that the raven is real or a figment of the speaker's imagination, the raven has a personality. The raven is a dark bird, not like a parrot that's of gaudy colors. And ravens are capable of mimicking human speech, by the way. Um, this raven arrives, and the raven only says one word: nevermore. So, what's interesting, though, is that the speaker gives us some interesting rhymes before that for nevermore. He himself has actually already initiated this concept, so that when the raven shows up, it's no big surprise that the raven says nevermore. It's almost as if he's personified all his doubts, all his fears into this bird. And he's allowing the bird to give him the answer that he cannot find on his own. That he has to have the raven show up and say to him, look, you've lost her. Give it up. You're never going to see her again. Get your head out of the books. Stop lying in that chair crying. Get up and get on with your life almost. But he can't do that. At the end, what happens? He falls on the floor, rolling in the shadow cast by the bird, cast by this raven. He is lost to despair. Lenore is interesting. What sort of impression do we get about Lenore? She is so spectacular that the angels took her from him, that she is among the angels now. The seraphs, which is a word for angels, wanted her, came for her, took her away. She is with them now. He will never see her again. She is saintly, the saintly Lenore. When we stop and think about what we know about ravens, some of these facts, this is almost an illusion here. Some of these facts that we know about these birds, and please don't connect them with football. This is the reason why our football team is named the Raven, is because this poem was written in Baltimore. But what we know about ravens, they're also known as crows. They're carrion birds. They eat the dead. They're often found with the dead. So you think about in Poe's time, before we had electricity, before we had television or radio. So it's nighttime and all you have is this candlelight, this little lantern glowing. Give you some light so we have that flickering light effect again. Shadows dancing. And it's dark, and there's a little bit of a storm out there. He keeps referring to this tempest. A tempest literally means a storm. So we have the sound of rain falling. There's all these sounds that are hard to account for. They create a little bit more of a mystery. They make things a little bit more deceptive, creepy. The wind is blowing. If you've ever been in a house when the power has gone out and it's nighttime, it's creepy. And so Poe is playing upon this. He's playing upon our natural fears of the dark, our fears of the unknown. And for people of his time, this would be a very common occurrence. They would be familiar with this. Everything he's describing that they've experienced. So they get pulled into that eerie feeling a lot more quickly than we would as a modern audience. And then to have the raven fly in. Birds got into houses. It wasn't unusual. If you've ever been in a store and seen a bird flying around in there, birds get into buildings. So for the raven to fly in again, not out of the ordinary, not unexpected, not impossible. So all these things are within the realm of possibility. Even the raven speaking. He even says about the bird, you had an owner who evidently had some sort of misfortune, who could only teach you this one word, nevermore, and somehow you've gotten away from him. Whether the storm blew you off course or whatever, you are now here in my house with this one rotten word, nevermore. Why am I jinxed with this? So the raven becomes a symbol. As I said, it can be a representation of all the fears and regrets and such that the speaker has, but it also, for us as the reader, it's our fear of the unknown. And ravens are often associated with death. The Norse god Odin had 2 ravens with him, and Odin was a god of death. He gathered the souls of fallen warriors off the fields and carried them off to Valhalla. You really didn't want to see Odin coming. It meant that you were about to die. So we have all these images that gather with the raven. Why does he have the raven land on a bust of Pallas? First of all, Pallas is Pallas Athena. That's the Greek goddess of wisdom and logical thought. She was also a goddess of war. And so, even though she was more associated with owls, she could also be associated with ravens because she was a warrior goddess. Um, so, the raven lands on a bust of Pallas Athena. That is a way of saying we should believe what the bird says, that the bird is somehow associated with wisdom. The bird has knowledge or information that the rest of us are denied. The Plutonian shore, Poe refers to that at least twice in the poem. This is a land of darkness and death. Pluto was the Roman name for Hades, in both cases the god of death in Greek and Roman mythology. So again, he's referring to the afterlife, and he's not referring to the happy afterlife either. He's referring to the land of the cursed, the damned, the condemned. So he's talking about the raven came out of the Plutonian night, the Plutonian shore. That raven didn't come from heaven. That raven came from hell. Bird or devil, thing of evil. Is the bird really evil? Or is this just an image that the speaker has cast upon it? But what's more amazing about this poem than the story that it's telling is the amazing rhyme scheme. You got pulled in. The rhythm, the beat. You got pulled into this. We go back and we look at, and he has this repetition. Each stanza sounds like the previous stanza. Then this ebony bird beguiling my sad fancy into smiling, by the graven stern decorum of the countenance it wore. Though thy crest be shorn and shaven, thou, I said, art no craven. Look at these rhymes: beguiling, smiling, shaven, craven. And then he breaks back now to war and shore. He's got this interesting rhyme scheme going, but he's also got some internal rhythms going that keep us bouncing along, moving along with this. I shouldn't say bouncing, that sounds too happy, but it keeps pulling us along. It's got a rhythm, it's almost got like a step to it. And then it pauses for always, quoth the raven, nevermore. That last line always is broken, it's different, and yet it will rhyme with that last line before it. Above the chamber door, with his name nevermore. He keeps us going through this whole poem, 20 different stanzas. He maintains this. He has some alliteration that floats in here. And he does this all on purpose. Not a word is put in here casually. Everything was very specifically chosen to give us this sound effect, to give us this feeling as we go through. Nothing farther than he uttered, not a feather than he fluttered, till I scarcely more than muttered. Whew! He's speeding it up again there. Other friends have flown before. On the morrow he will leave me as my hopes have flown before. Other friends have flown before. Oh, this is typical Poe. He's lost other people to death. So many people to death. And even if it's not death, they still have left him. This man is all alone. He has nobody. And he figures in the morning, the bird will be gone too. And the bird says, nope, nevermore. I'm never leaving you. I'll be here forever. This is really eerie and spooky. For people to read this, they can understand what it's like to feel alone, to feel this level of despair. It was not uncommon for people to have lost loved ones early in life, for children, family members to have passed away while you were still quite young. They've all felt this pang of death, of loss. So for people of his time, this really resonated. It really rang true in their souls. They could empathize with this man. They wondered what kind of God could do this to them. Although Poe never really refers so much to God as he does to the devil, to the evil of darkness. See, the angels here in this wonderful illustration have taken Lenore. She's gone on to heaven, but he doesn't feel he's headed that way. He's got these grim thoughts about what's going to happen to him. the dirges of his hope. Just look at his word choice. He is very careful to make sure he keeps bringing up these death images, dirges. Dirges are songs sung at funerals. He should be comforted by this cushioned seat, this velvet seat, but all he can think of is that this beautiful seat is a place that she shall never rest her head again. Yeah, here, never ever shall she press, never more. All he can think about is how she's missing from his life, from everything. He has comforts, but they are nothing without Lenore. Poe does a masterful job with the language. Swung by seraphim, here we're getting that alliteration. So he's pulling us in, even if we don't realize it. The sounds that he's using, the rhythms, are pulling us in, making us listen whether we really want to or not. It's very hard to tune this poem out. So when we analyze poetry, I want you to think about things like this. Think about the tools that were used, the different ways that the poem and the poet pulls you in and makes you think. Word choice is a big deal. Why did they use the particular words they used? Because there are other words they could have used. Why that one? Sometimes it's a requirement to make the rhythm work. But many times it's because they want you to get a particular image in your mind. Now next class, I will have another video with a group of poems that I will walk us through, and I will show you different examples of how these different poets use different tools, different techniques to get meaning across. Till then, take care and stay well.